Yeah, so thanks everyone for joining. I want to kind of give you an overview today and ultimately give you something to take away with you from this webinar, right? And to drive conversations further about understanding what international capabilities we have and how we can bring value to customers that have a global environment. So just quickly running over the agenda, we're going to do a quick deep dive into what really is a managed global connectivity stack, the challenges of managing those global connectivity networks today, and the challenges that your customers will potentially face. And, ultimately, ideally bringing in AireSpring in to have a conversation of how we can reduce those complexities. The benefits of those managed global connectivity solutions. We'll go quickly over, some of the international carrier options that we have, where we've delivered, and then how we integrate them into our air control ITSM platform. And then we want to give you some of the industry case studies that have been really interesting, interesting questions that brought up really interesting connectivity solution deployments that have led us all around the world. And then, ultimately go through some case studies, question and answers, and then, as Patrick mentioned, the company update. I will just reference you, if you can see that handout, that business case for managed global connectivity network solutions, I'd highly recommend you download that. It's not very long, but it really does ultimately bring everything that we're talking about today back to you. So you, again, can identify the right kind of questions to ask when you do see something in the marketplace that, brings some kind of interest to you. You can, get some form of knowledge from that and then ultimately bring us in, right? So we're an extension of you. Please feel free to reach out to us whenever you need.
So let's talk a little bit about what global managed network connectivity is. So these days, businesses are spread out all over the map. They've got teams, working from just about everywhere, cloud apps powering every part of their operation, global footprints, and they just keep growing. But the thing that really ties it all together is network connectivity. And that can get really messy. A lot of companies are still leaning into outdated WAN setups that are stitched together across different regions, different carriers, mismatched, service levels. Old school technology like MPLS is still hanging around. It's tough to get, speed, flexibility, and reliability that you really need. What companies need is something that just works, something that's fast and secure and easy to scale across the globe without dealing with a dozen different vendors or more, and tons of compliance headaches. Right, that's where kind of the managed global connectivity steps in. We handle all the heavy lifting to a provider, and we specialize in this stuff. And it means businesses can streamline everything, cut down on costs, and still keep complete control and visibility, all without sacrificing performance, security, or reliability. So let's unpack what global network connectivity services really is. It's really how businesses connect everything together globally. As I mentioned, widespread offices, cloud environments, people that are remote workers possibly, and devices. And they each need connectivity that's has speed and is reliable and is secure. So let's start with the backbone. So wide area networks, or a WAN. This includes the older school technology like MPLS, but even newer technologies like SD-WAN and SASE and mesh VPN networks. So MPLS was kind of the gold standard for years. It's super reliable, great for predictable performance and especially if you're running voice or video or real-time protocols. Comes with guaranteed SLAs, but it can get really pricey, and scaling it globally can take a lot of resources and time. SD-WAN, on the other hand, is the newer, more flexible option. It's been around a while, but it's still a later technology than MPLS. It lets you use multiple types of connections like broadband or fiber, LTE, 5G, and even satellite now, and routes traffic intelligently based on real-time performance. It's more cost-effective, it's easier to scale, and adds a lot of visibility to control um, for the IT staffs. Most modern enterprises are either moving from MPLS to SD-WAN or are blending the two in some sort of a hybrid setup. Maybe they still have some MPLS connectivity between some replication sites or something that really needs to stay private and segmented. Then we've got cloud connectivity. This ensures that you have secure direct access to cloud platforms like AWS or Azure or Google Cloud. And so we can provide that as well so that you're not bottlenecking to try to reach into critical apps at data centers or at your HQs. Everything's in the cloud now, so we can help with that cloud connectivity as well. Then, of course, global internet access. This is really about high performance internet that's enterprise grade, right? Backed with SLAs. You're not relying on best effort in these really far-flung regions. For your teams on the move, mobile and remote access, whether it's connecting over LTE or 5G or satellite, that kind of keeps your remote workforce connected and productive. And then, of course, last but not least, security and compliance. So firewalls, encryption on VPNs, making sure your data stays secure and compliant within regional compliances, right? So for instance, in the EU, you have GDPR or HIPAA in the United States, or Asia Pac has entirely different sets of compliances. So, when we talk about global connectivity, we're really talking about building a seamless and secure and a high-performing digital fabric, right, across your entire organization. It's not just circuits. It can be just circuits, but there's other technology that we layer in there, so that no matter where your people or resources live, they can be connected. So these are some of the big trends that are shaping how global networks are evolving. It's basically all the technology that's making the internet smarter and faster and more secure. We talked about SD-WAN and SDN. You may hear it referred to as SDN, which is software defined network. And that's kind of the brains behind your network. It lets you control traffic and routes from one central place, single pane of glass control. And then you're able to direct traffic. So imagine you're able to say, hey, Zoom calls get priority over Netflix, or Facebook gets squashed, or YouTube only educational YouTube gets through, or whatever it is. It gives you that level of control that we didn't used to have at that granular level with MPLS. 5G and private 5G. So this is all about real-time wireless, right? So IoT devices, I can think of manufacturing and hospitals, and where machines actually need to talk to each other instantaneously. Private 5G kind of gives them that dedicated line to talk to one another. And then 5G DIA connectivity is just a easy way to get access into some of the more hard to reach areas. Cloud connectivity optimization basically makes your cloud apps like Office 365 or Salesforce or Zoom run faster and smoother. It cuts down on lag and helps with performance, especially since now more than half of the workforce out there is remote, at least part-time remote, at least. Multi-cloud or hybrid cloud, instead of companies putting all their eggs in one basket like AWS or Azure, we're starting to see companies spread it out. So where one app or database runs in AWS, it may back up to Google Cloud. So multiple connectivity is needed. So you have to have more flexibility in some of those connections as well. And then AI-driven network automation is like really having an autopilot for your network, right? So being able to predictively drive traffic and steer traffic how you want it to prioritize data or security. That's really kind of where the AI on the back end in technologies like SASE or even on our ITSM platform, where you're watching for different network instances automatically. It's very, very important that you have at least some level of AI in your network nowadays. Then, of course, SASE and ZTNA, that's part of SASE. ZTNA is actually part of SASE, I should say. These are basically the new security superheroes, right? So remote workforces working from everywhere in the world, these tools make sure that users only get access to what they need and they are secure, whether they're in the office or at home or on the beach. It's security that kind of follows you around, right? So the zero trust, network access, and all of the other components of SASE, which we'll go through here in just a minute. But that's a emerging technology even still today, and it's going to grow over the next few years immensely. And then LEO satellites, which is low Earth orbit. So that's stuff like Starlink, right? So there's a couple others that are starting to come on, but certainly Starlink is the most mature and most well-known from a brand recognition. Super helpful for remote areas where fiber isn't an option, right? So we can handle that as well globally as well. So what are some challenges of managing a global network? Well, it's a little bit like spinning plates blindfolded, like on a moving train. So a lot of things in the air at one time, and you have to kind of cover them all. Companies have offices scattered all over the world, each of them with their own internet provider, their own gear, and then their own definition of what uptime really is, right? One branch is using some decades old switch that they've never replaced, while another is trying to connect through a provider that no one's ever heard of and won't respond to tickets until next Tuesday. So yeah, getting consistent performance across the board, that is pretty much a fantasy. So and then there's the whole security thing. The moment your data crosses a border, it's like sending it on some international road trip through some pretty sketchy neighborhoods, right? So threats evolve daily. They just keep keeping up with it. It really starts to feel like a full-time job. So while the compliance landscape shifts depending on what country you're in. So we mentioned GDPR, which is the EU, and APAC has, there's several of them, CCPA and APPI and 3 or 4 others. And then of course the US has their own patchwork of HIPAA, PCI, and then things like FedRAMP, different things like that. keeping up with all of that is very complex. So you really need someone to be able to manage all of those different regulatory complexities from a global standpoint. It's really becomes too difficult for a single team or a single person to handle. And then even when you do get the infrastructure in place, performance can be all over the map. One site is going to be blazing fast, and the other can't even hold a Teams call without sounding like a robot underwater. So you'd think internet quality would be standardized by now, but that is not the case. It's still wildly inconsistent depending on the region. So having someone navigate those waters is very, very important. And then, of course, gosh, don't get me even started on the cost, right? Traditional infrastructures like MPLS are crazy expensive, and the carriers are making them more expensive on purpose every day. They are complex. It is time consuming to run them. It's like trying to build a racetrack just to drive a scooter down the road, right? So not to mention trying to support all of this across different time zones, languages. You've got to staff a help desk that can handle issues in Tokyo and London and Sao Paulo, all in the same day. So you really need follow the sun support as well. Most IT teams are already stretched really thin, and they do not have time for that kind of support. They may have one or two people trying to juggle desktop support, cybersecurity, and global WAN, and it's just not sustainable for larger enterprises. Without a dedicated team or the right partner, it's really tough to keep things running smoothly, right? So I say all that. So yeah, managing global connectivity isn't just about plugging in cables. It's a constant balancing act. Like I said in the opening there, it's like balancing plates on a moving train. That's why companies are looking for help, and that's why AireSpring exists, right? Because of this kind of environment, trying to go it alone it just doesn't cut it anymore, really. So what's the answer? Company needs their networks to just work, right? No matter where their teams are, across cities, countries, and even continents. So that's why more and more folks are going with managed global connectivity. It's kind of a no-brainer. And if you hand off the heavy lifting to a provider who knows what they're doing, like AireSpring, you're going to end up saving money, simplifying everything, and still be able to stay totally in control without giving up on the security aspect of everything. So it's a pretty easy win. So what does the global network connectivity actually means, right? So it's not just, wait, I'm skipping something here. I'm sorry. So what are the benefits of managed global connectivity? So it's a lot, actually. First off, you cut down on chaos. No more juggling a dozen vendors or two dozen vendors. Things run smoother. Costs get more predictable. You can scale up really fast when you need to. You also get the kind of security and compliance that lets you sleep, which is really great for IT teams. Better performance overall, and then true global support, like actual help when you need it. And if you're using cloud apps, that can all be optimized as well. So, and then also local expert, I forgot to mention local expertise, right? With a global reach, that's also something that that can be managed as well from a provider like AireSpring. So the bottom line, the cost benefit analysis, because at the end of the day, it's all about value, right? With AireSpring, you'll get lower OpEx, one vendor, one bill, easy, nice and clean, no surprise charges, predictable billing, and less strain on your IT team because we handle all of the noise that comes with tier 1 and tier 2 triage. Cut down on downtime. Pricing can scale with you, so you don't have to pay for stuff you don't need. More customized. Plus, you get faster return on investment, right? So better security. Your IT team gets to focus on strategy instead of firefighting. All of the soft costs you get to recoup very, very quickly. And so, we have a case study where one customer saw 28% in cost savings and 40% faster ticket resolution. That actually happens when you're on the air control platform with the AI backend, and all the automated ticketing and troubleshooting that comes along with it. It's easy to tell that story, right? So it's a very good portal, and if you're not familiar with that, I encourage you to reach out for a demo. We'll talk a little bit more about it here in just a little bit.
Yeah, and just adding to that, Stephen, I think this whole narrative here is that everyone's trying to do more with less, right? So we're seeing it's not a trend anymore. It's a known factor. You mentioned it. The IT teams are so stretched. How can we be leveraged into position to actually add value and reduce that, that capex and opex cost on a day-to-day basis? So yeah, when we think about the wins that we've had as well, a lot of this has come from M&A activity that's been taking place in the market, and trying to understand what's really going on with the company A network and how it's integrating with companies B network. And then we talk about digital infrastructure change all the time. How can we link those together in the most cost efficient way, and ultimately future proofing the network at the same time, right? So yeah, I think this is a great slide, and this speaks to if you see one of these in your customer base where they're having challenges, this is where we should be brought in.
Exactly. Oops. So let's talk about some of the options, right? So some of the managed services that we've already talked about. With AireSpring, you've got choices when it comes to SD-WAN and SASE. If you're looking for a cloud-native SASE platform with their own private global backbone, Cato is where we have that covered, right? It's modern. It's built from the cloud first perspective. It's scalable. It replaces the old legacy stuff that's kind of weighing down IT organizations. From a all-in-one security and networking baked into a single box, that is Fortinet. So Fortinet really shines when it comes to the on-prem firewalls, and of course the SD branch, which is the switches and the APs behind that. So we have that as an option as well globally. And then of course VeloCloud, which now is Arista. Many people may not know that already. The news has been out there for a couple months now, but if you don't know that, the next generation of VeloCloud is now Arista. And that's great for organizations who want really high performance and strong SD-WAN. So it's all about boosting performance. So VeloCloud still has the DMPO, which is the dynamic multipath optimization, which gives you that packet-based failover, that subsonic failover, where it's per packet load balancing versus session-based failover. And it's really a much more elegant SD-WAN. They do one thing really, really great, and that's SD-WAN, better than any other SD-WAN vendor out there. No matter which flavor fits the customer best, you're backed by a solutions engineering team, which is my team, to do full design and then of course ongoing engineering support with our MSC team as well. So you're not really figuring this out on your own. We're there all along the way to help you. Now you may be asking about migrating, and I just want to throw this slide in there real quick. So how about migrations? How do we do it when there's an existing network in place? It's really pretty simple. You start with a couple of sites that are in the existing network, the MPLS network, let's say, and then you just simply build them as a bridge to the new network. And we have expertise in this. AireSpring does this on a regular basis, and we can pretty much ensure a seamless transition over into the new world. So old network to new network is not something that you should be scared about in any way whatsoever. We mentioned SD-WAN, right? And then briefly we talked about SASE. So what is SASE? SD-WAN is actually one of the very first building blocks of SASE, but Gartner defines it as secure access service edge, and it delivers a converged network and security as a service. And it includes things like SD-WAN and secure web gateway, cloud access security broker, next-gen firewalls, and a few others that we'll talk about like ZTNA. SASE supports branch offices, remote workers, on-premises secure access, primarily delivered as a service, and enables zero trust based on the identity of devices or entities or employees, right? So only resources get assigned to employees that are entitled to access those resources. So let's talk about some of the components. Let's see here. There we go. So SD-WAN, we talked about SD-WAN right off the bat. That's the key cornerstone building block of SASE, right? But then you have firewall as a service, right? So firewalls are a crucial component of network security. And then of course, web application firewalls, they sit in front of web applications where they act as kind of reverse proxies, intercepting and inspecting data to make sure that only legitimate traffic reaches that application. Secure web gateway, this is the primary function of this is to secure internet traffic, right? So protects against malicious websites or malware or cyber threats. And it provides filtering and inspecting in real time. So there's no lag in that, right? CASB, which is Cloud Access Security Broker, CASB for short, that helps give visibility and compliance and data protection, right? So for cloud applications. So it enables employees or resources to only access those resources that they are allowed to access. It works hand in hand with the next one, ZTNA, right? So zero trust network access. It ensures the identity of every user and device before accessing those cloud applications, okay, if that makes sense. So multi-factor authentication, making sure that you are who you say you are and you are accessing what you are entitled to access. And then RBI, which is remote browser isolation. This kind of works hand in hand with secure web gateway because any potential threat or link can be isolated in a remote browser that has malware on it, right? So if it detects that there's malware or a threat, that can be investigated in a safe environment in a remote browser. And if there is truly some threat there, then it can be eliminated before it ever gets to the endpoint. User and entity behavior analytics with DLP, right? So UEBA DLP for short. DLP for short is what I use, right? Just DLP. It works hand in hand with CASB and ZTNA. Okay, so but it reports on things that that leave unauthorized and blocks that access, right? So it makes sure that data does not leave your enterprise, and then offers reporting beyond that, so that you can investigate or enforce policies, things of that nature. And then, of course, unified management. That's the single pane of glass management that all SASE, or even SD-WAN for that matter, should come with. All right, SASE solves three major problems. So why is SASE such a big deal? Well, first up, where does your data actually live, right? It's not just in one place anymore. You've got data in the cloud, in the data centers, on someone's laptop at home, in IoT devices, you name it. That kind of a distributed environment is a nightmare to manage without the right solution. So that's the first major problem that SASE will solve. Secondly, encryption. Everything is encrypted these days, which is great for security, but not so great when you need to inspect that traffic in real time, right? So deep packet inspection at wire speed is no joke. And so it takes serious horsepower and kind of ninja level SSL tools to pull it off without killing performance. And that's where really great SASE vendors excel, is inspecting those deep encrypted packets and being able to ensure security at that level. So that's problem number two solved, right? And third is scalability, right? So it's not just about having more users, but even though that is part of it, it's time zones, it's physical distance between each other, physical distance between data centers or POPs, massive data loads, and the demand to process all of this faster, right? So SASE handles that at a global scale without making your infrastructure too burdened. So the bottom line, SASE helps you take back control of things like performance and visibility and security, even as the demands keep stretching further, and faster. So this is where it all comes together.
Exactly.
So yeah, so Joseph, do you want to take this from here?
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
So
go ahead.
I think all of the technological solutions that we're putting over the top, they, on a software level or a security level, ultimately they all need to be connected through a strong foundation, right? And one of the questions I get asked all the time is, who is the best network provider? And the reality is that there is no network provider, no fiber provider that can do everything everywhere by themselves, right? So what our goal was and still is to continue to build a direct relationship with global last mile internet service providers around the world based on where our demand is most, right? So over the last kind of 3.5 years, we've now built out direct relationships with 265 and counting internet service providers to be able to provide that last mile connectivity to the customer premise. And that can be, we'll go through it in a couple of slides, but through a range of different access topologies. I also think it's important to note that there's not one provider, kind of to rule them all, right? So not all internet is the same. If we look at things like China, there's two different global backbones that the Chinese providers use for local traffic and international traffic. So depending on what your customer is trying to achieve, we've got solutions for that also. But I want you to know, like, if there is a provider that we don't have, maybe you've seen some of these providers on this slide. You know, this isn't all of them, but we will go and find them. And if they are willing to work with us, we will continue to expand our relationships with them. The other thing to know is that a lot of these providers are super intrigued in the channel and how to drive demand from the channel to eyeballing their network, right? So we've seen a number of international providers kind of pinpoint AireSpring as one of those preferred channel providers to be able to sell their network, and through either aggressive rates or whatever it may be, business intelligence, they're willing to help us as a team and you guys to be able to drive those business decisions forward on a local and international level. The next question I kind of get asked is, how we deploy, how we manage these global services. So we have the ability to, if we're selling a 40 or a SAS, a Cato or a Velo device, we'll stage and ship in the US, and we will ship white glove to that customer premise by going through the whole process of customs and all that logistic issue. We have a white glove service that will manage it all the way to the customer prem. And then we can add on field tech services if needed to be able to, actually install that service with test and turn up. Because again, going back to my point, these teams, they may have a site contact on the ground, but the reality is they're not a jack of all trades, right? They may be an IT person that only focuses on desktop help. So we can actually assist with all of those deployments, working with local, local staff on the ground, and working in their language, in their time zone. I think it's also important to note, and Stephen, you kind of mentioned it before, we do have a follow the sun mentality with bilingual support. We actually have 12 countries covered with AireSpring employees today. So we are growing internationally. It's one of our fastest growing drivers in the channel. And it's something we want to continue to monopolize on, right? So, again, we want to be there. Bring us in. We know how to manage all of these, complex, challenging conversations that you may have, and we'll drive the deal forward. The next thing we get asked a lot about is how we bill internationally. So we do have a unified solution that manages multiple different currencies around the world. I will say currently today, it's generally the major currencies. A lot of our wholesale vendors bill us in the major currencies also. So we try and back that off. There is a case where we can potentially work with in a tier 2 currency, but we just need to be kind of conscious of the fact that there is volatility in the marketplace for currencies, right? So we want to make sure that your commissions, the bills don't change, all that kind of stuff is very well protected. So we'll look at it, just needs to make sense, and then we'll move forward from there. The other thing, sorry, just go back to one slide. The other thing that we've noticed in the global marketplace is that, and again, we kind of mentioned this before, is that people's understanding of their billing processes internationally with different taxes, VATs, there could be inflation rates that take place within contract, all of these kind of things will help manage. But we want to bring that knowledge to you and your customers up front, and ultimately, push the AireSpring, solution, right? We'll take care of all of that. But we have seen that happen in turn with different customers, just like maybe you've seen in the US with CO changes and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, we've been doing this for years now, and we've built a team that is full on focused on making sure that you guys are supported. So moving forward quickly, kind of wanted to give you an idea of where we're seeing most demand and where we should focus our attention in the marketplace. And typically these customers that we've been working with are multinational organizations with global footprints. So what that really means is they typically have a headquarter in the US that need to connect back to Europe, Asia, Australia, Africa, Latin America, and they want it all consolidated, right? So they typically range between $100 million and $500 million in global revenue on a yearly basis. And they've been forced to look at digital transformation initiatives, right? So again, we keep talking about the reduction of IT staff. putting automation in place. How do we manage this with fewer people? These are where we're seeing the most demand for the services that we're offering. Again, this is MPLS to modern SD-WAN and SASE solutions. The other challenge that we've seen that we've been able to come up with a solution for is trying to figure out what they actually have installed today, right? So typically, I think there was a stat that I was given by our marketing team last week, and a typical IT person stays in their role for, I think, 3.7 years. And they don't sign agreements with vendors the day they start, right? So typically a network will stay in place for 5 to 7 years. But in that period, they'll lose that knowledge of what was installed, who did what, if there's LAN cabling on site, all of this stuff, right? So we'll help with trying to understand, what's installed today, how we can, transform it. In some cases, we'll actually manage that solution if it's in-term through air control and then migrate it over to an AireSpring solution. But we're willing to look at different ways to be able to make this a really functional solution for a customer that's truly looking for digital transformation rather than just being told to do it. And as I say, through AireSpring, through air control, IT teams, they'll be able to see everything on demand immediately through our pane of glass. So in terms of what we're selling internationally, we are seeing an uptick in terms of broadband internet services through fiber. You'll still believe copper is still in place in some places, depending on the country that you're delivering services to. It is changing, but that requires a lot of investment from governments and joint ventures between governments and PTTs, the local incumbent operators, to be able to actually build out those infrastructure, fiber infrastructure projects. A good example of this is in the UK. There's been a significant amount of fiber broadband initiative being put into the ground in the UK to be able to get higher bandwidth speeds, right? In areas where we deliver in Africa, for example, I think a lot of people try and stay away from things like a fixed wireless service, but in some cases actually better than the local incumbent terrestrial service because of theft, vandalism, challenging weather conditions, whatever it may be, especially where there's still copper today. I actually have a funny story that I think I may have mentioned before in a previous webinar, but we had in a previous life, we had a solution we were delivering in Tunisia for a broadband solution for a bank. And it was the only availability of getting connectivity to the bank was through a copper wire, right? And people stole the copper. When it reinstalled it, they stole the copper again. So we actually backfilled essentially a ditch with two copper pairs, one lower down and one higher up. And the higher up one, was never connected to anything, so they thought they stole it. We had a working solution to the bank to mitigate those kind of problems. So we'll work with you. There's ways to get things done. We have a wealth of experience of doing that kind of stuff. So I mentioned wireless, dedicated internet services. That's kind of the bread and butter of what we're delivering. So one-to-one contention ratios, typically between, I would say, 100 and 1 gig of bandwidth, right? So depending on the country, again, depending on the customer's budget constraints, we'll make a plan for that. And then we've started to deliver Starlink services internationally also. Okay, layer 2. So this is where it gets a little bit more complex. So as I mentioned, there's not one provider that can deliver everything everywhere. When we're looking at layer 2, we're typically not looking at SD-WAN. We're typically not looking at SASE solutions. But if a customer houses their data in a data center, maybe they need disaster recovery from their office to a data center, something like that, we're happy to provide quotes depending on the sea cable availability, right? So we've seen requirements in the past where a customer has an office in Indiana and they maybe have a data center in Brazil. The reality is that you need to piecemeal together multiple different providers to be able to provide that link from Indiana to Brazil through, maybe it goes through Miami and then on sea cable out. So we'll work with you to understand what they're really trying to achieve. In a lot of cases, you know, that layer 2 is more expensive to be able to provide these piecemeal together solutions. But we've delivered them. Let us know. It's kind of a case-by-case basis. We're seeing more demand for layer 2 connectivity to cloud on-ramps from customer premise. So whether the, you know, it's a Azure environment that sits outside the US, whether it be, you know, Google Cloud, whatever it is, we're happy to provide layer 2 connections within countries from the customer prem to data centers. DC to DC connectivity is very easy. Work with many providers that have connectivity and their own fiber via IRUs, or they've actually dug into the ground. We're happy to do that. And then if we look at, you know, how this really all connects together, it's through C cables, which I think is fascinating, and I can go down a deep rabbit hole on this. But C cable connectivity and the way that companies are now building C cables, they want to do it themselves rather than have leased capacity. If we talk about the kind of hyperscalers and the content delivery networks, they're looking at building their own C cables for their own use. So there's excess capacity on a significant amount of C cables right now, but it's high capacity, right? It's kind of 10 to 100 gigs, depending on the optics. Now people are asking for 400 gigs. If we get into that conversation, it's a good conversation to have, but it's very, very specific. And then understanding, you know, protected routing on all of these services. So understanding if they need active-active, active-passive. If we look at Asia Pac, for example, we have the Ring of Fire throughout the, you know, Southeast Asia, in the Philippines with all the undersea volcanoes. You know, if you buy an unprotected route and you're selling to a bank or something, that's just asking for disaster. Something will go wrong, and having that active protected circuit is going to bring value. And you know, they'll already know that they need something, but just understanding that that is an option, and going into that conversation, you sound like, you know, you have an idea of what they're trying to achieve. Quickly, I don't want to go too deep into this, but we have an internet service in China that ultimately allows customers that generally headquartered in the US to be able to connect to their Chinese locations and access the same platforms in terms of, you know, ERP platforms, the same way that the local guy in Los Angeles would be able to. So ultimately, we have a global private network that we will navigate the Chinese firewall with. So we'll be able to provide localized internet connectivity to the customer prem, and then we'll funnel that traffic through our global private network with a local IP address sitting in Los Angeles, and basically direct all that traffic to the US. You know, I mentioned before that not all internet is created the same. There are a lot of restrictions in China in terms of the firewall that sits there. And it's a real thing. It's a real challenge for multinational companies that are trying to get aligned with you know, the workforce that sits in China. Okay, so we kind of mentioned a lot of this. If we think about the US, there's 50 states in the US, and think about how fragmented it is in terms of your home ISP. Now we're dealing with the rest of the world. So it's so fragmented. And Stephen mentioned it before, the way that customers are managing their vendors and their contracts today is kind of a nightmare. So understanding, you know, what their renewal terms are, if they've gone into auto renew, the cancellation date, all this kind of stuff, that's legacy. They need to change it. They need to think about ways that they're going to protect themselves in the future, even if the IT guy is only there for 3.7 years. The companies are going to want to know this to make sure that they understand what they're buying today, how they're buying it, and you know, the potential for risk within their organization, especially when we're looking at M&A and that kind of stuff. You know, working with multiple different NOCs, siloed regional carriers. So you have carriers that, you know, if we look at Deutsche Telekom, T-Mobile, they are ultimately roll up to the same company, same organization, but they're very, very different organizations. So our goal is to ultimately act as the integrator here between all of the organizations for ticketing, invoices, obviously all that stuff that you'll see in air control. And yeah, the impact, you know, poor visibility, poor pricing, people will take advantage of you. You know, if you're willing to just sign a renewal willy-nilly, you can get discounts, but they're more focused on just getting something resolved. And there's no accountability within, in a fragmented network. Nobody really cares if everyone's kind of finger pointing at each other when something does go wrong. And we see it happen again and again. And when people are finger pointing, everyone's protecting themselves, which ultimately increases downtime. And then trying to get, SLA credits becomes a real challenge because nobody wants to take control of what's really happened. And things will go wrong, right? I wish we worked in a world where we didn't have to raise tickets, but things do go wrong. Trucks run into telephone poles, whatever it is. It's who's going to take control of it and who's going to manage it, and the cost associated with doing that. Okay, so this kind of just sums it up. The next slide. Yeah, so if we have a customer, they'll contract with AireSpring. We'll contract with a local in-country carrier or service provider, and we are 100% transparent about the last mile provider. You know exactly what you're going to get. We can outline the AS numbers that the traffic's going to break out on, especially when we're looking at SD-WAN and SASE solutions to make sure there's true diversity. We can go down to the level of looking at true physical path diversity if it's available, depending on how risk averse the customer really is, right? So there is sometimes cost involved. We can build in to additional locations if needed. Oh, sorry, into the same location with a secondary fiber. But again, it's that business risk that the customer needs to figure out if they want to take control of it or not. And then through Air Control, you have complete transparency, which ultimately helps resolution in terms of deliveries, outage issues, billing issues, the whole life of the contract and the whole life of the service. So yeah, I think one of the things we want to portray is, the customer's going to get one invoice, have one point of contact, and you have one SLA for everything everywhere.
I'm glad you mentioned Air Control, which is a great transition to the Air Control slides here. So I mentioned before, if you have not seen a demo of this, please reach out to your channel manager and schedule a time to see a demo of the Air Control platform. It is our proprietary ITSM platform. We have built this from the ground up. We've been in existence for 24 years. As you can imagine, over those 24 years, we have developed numerous portals, ticketing portals, project management portals, monitoring portals, all the different portals for the different vendors like Fortinet, Cato, VeloCloud, Meraki, PepLink. All of those have now been brought into a single pane of glass, so it kind of gives you a 360-degree view of everything deployed via AireSpring. So it's a single pane of glass that we like to say, right? But it's a single glimpse. You can see your network health, how many support tickets you have open. We have APIs that are in the power grids and national weather services, even larger carrier network outage events. All of those are brought into Air Control, a single place to view all of that. It really is a great platform. We can't go too far into it today because we are right at time and we want to get to some questions, but just know if you want to see more about this and how powerful it really is, it's also very powerful for partners to see their customers as well. Please reach out and schedule that demo. We would be more than happy to take you through it. It's a very, very powerful platform. Well, I'm trying to get this thing to go. There we go. We'll just skip that one. Patrick, I think oh, no, actually, let's do a couple case studies. Joseph, I had forgotten we were going to do case studies. We're getting real close on time, so we got to keep going.
Yeah, let's do the Iraq one to start with. I just want to quickly use that as a way into a deal, right? So we I think it was the second one.
Yeah, hang on a second.
That's good. So we actually we sold a deal in Iraq for a customer
There
that's
it is.
actually a federal government security contractor. And the original request that came along was, can we deploy a Fortinet device in an HA environment to Iraq? Because Fortinet are, dealing with federal solutions is a challenge. But we got the green light from Fortinet to be able to do it. So we did stage and configure the equipment in the US and we deployed it to Iraq. But one of the questions came, when we were going through the discovery process was, what is your underlying connectivity today, and is it suitable for your use? And they came back and they're like, no, is it something you can do? And they were coming up out of contract with a local ISP that they had been working with in Iraq. And we created a solution that was ultimately two 400 meg DIA connectivity links at two different locations with a satellite/wireless backup, so that if the fiber was cut, which does happen often in Iraq, that they still have connectivity. They also wanted to add on something called AGA, which is that AireSpring gateway access, and to be able to connect with ultimately a VLAN back to the US to ensure that they had as much uptime with a direct path to US connectivity as quickly as possible. This was kind of sponsored by the morale, welfare, and support solution that the US government give to overseas employees, and ultimately it reduces latency, jitter, so that they can FaceTime family and friends with the lowest latency that they can actually achieve without paying a fortune for it. So just from asking that one question, we created this whole environment for not just delivering a device or a piece of metal to the site, but actually something that gives users on the ground an enhanced experience and reduced cost by, I think, about $5,000 a month on this case. And I just think it's important to note that these 400 meg DIA links cost on average about $30,000 a month. So if you think about how much a 400 meg DIA costs in the US compared to Iraq, that's a happy partner. And just from asking that question, figuring out a solution, we now have that contract in place for, I think, the next 3 years. And it's another success story, right? So I just think it's a really cool way that we deployed a solution internationally.
It's really cool, and it shows just the versatility and customization of this solution, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to go over any more.
I just wanted, yeah, I think we're running short on time because there was so much great information. Thank you, both Stephen and Joseph, for ways to connect the globe.